Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. So, my guest today is Rachel Murrey. Now, Rachel helps people get clarity on who they are, what they actually want, and what they're meant to do next. Rachel blends practical mindset work with astrology and birth chart indicators, not in a fluffy way, but in a way that gives people language for patterns that they felt for years and a path to move forward. So, if you're in a place where you feel the next chapter is coming, but you're scared to turn the page, then this one is for you. Rachel, for my listeners that don't know you, who are you and what is your mission?
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, so I'm someone who's been through a huge transition myself, transformation over the last couple of years. It's still kind of ongoing, but I used to work in the corporate world. I lived in London. I was very much sort of climbing the ladder, doing kind of the acceptable kind of things, I would say, like society kind of approves of. And then I had what I would call a big awakening to, or a realization really, that I wasn't kind of living in alignment with my truth. And I didn't think that the life I was in was really going to fulfill me longer term. So now I feel, my mission is really to help others as much as I can, to guide them back into their own alignment, to help them understand themselves and the gifts that they hold and the unique abilities that they can harness, and just, help people become more fulfilled and become more aligned in the path that feels truly right for them, as opposed to what I used to find, which was that a path that just was approved of, but just didn't feel right for me.
Okay, so before we get to the awakening part, your childhood, your upbringing, if you could paint us a bit of a picture, please, Rachel, what was that like?
Yeah, nice. No, my childhood was amazing. I can't fault my childhood. I was so loved, which I think is the most what any child could ever ask for, right? I really felt that love. I grew up, probably did feel a bit different here and there. I don't think I was like, there was situations I would be in and I would choose the different thing to other kids. So I definitely kind of was aware of that, or I definitely am aware of it in retrospect. But for the most part, my childhood was lovely. I grew up, we didn't have a lot. Like we had, my parents worked really hard for what we had, but there's no complaints for me about any parts of my childhood. I'm very fortunate I didn't go through anything traumatic, let's say.
Okay, so what happened in your life then for you to realize that you needed to rewrite this story and have that awakening that you mentioned before?
Yeah, so it actually stemmed from a breakup, as a lot of these kind of pivotal moments in life do. I went through a bit of, crisis of self, and I'd just turned 30. I really just started to feel like things were a bit uncertain for the first time in a long time. I was watching everyone around me kind of like, on a aligned kind of path, so very sort of happy outwardly, as I would kind of say. And then I just felt something was off, like something just didn't feel right. I thought I need to do some self kind of reflection. I started meditating because I knew that I was dealing with quite a lot emotionally. And then that meditation kind of led me into, more of a drastic kind of awakening, where I really started questioning, who am I? What do I actually want? Is the life I'm in now going to fulfill me in the next 5 years, 10 years, etc.? So, it just came with a lot of uncomfortable questions, really. And I knew change was on the horizon. It was just kind of like making those changes. That was obviously the difficult part.
Okay, so do you think you've always been this person and you were obviously, you spoke about being misaligned. Do you think that that was always in you or did you have to build this sort of person?
Yeah, I think I did have to build her. And I think I did build her in my 20s without knowing I was building her, if that makes sense. Like the person I am now was definitely built through the experiences I went through in my 20s without consciously recognizing how much of my confidence was being built and how much I was learning, like just by perceiving things and sort of understanding the things that were going on around me. So I think I always had it in me to be maybe somebody that I would now see as more courageous in taking risks and kind of like moving towards an aligned path. But it took a lot of work to get to this point, and it's still ongoing, in the sense that I think when you're on a path of growth and when you're determined to get, reach your higher potential, there is always going to be things to work through. You never really stop learning about yourself. You never stop, figuring out ways that you can grow and become better. So I think my 20s were like a very pivotal time for me to grow into who I am now. And I just think she's always been there in the background, but just kind of like waiting for her moment, let's say.
In your content, I love your energy. I love your passion. We definitely got a lot of shared values. You talk a lot about society conditioning.
Mm.
What do you mean by that? And how do you see it showing up in people's lives day to day?
Yeah, so societal conditioning really is a mixture of beliefs and mindsets that we're kind of absorbing from the environments we're in and the people we're around without consciously being aware of these beliefs and these mindsets and these kind of habits that we form. A lot of it is down to, how things are supposed to be in the world or how things work and traditionally how things have always worked. And we see these examples day to day, even from being a kid, like, at school you go into school and if you're disruptive, you're kind of sent to stand outside. It's all about conformity, fitting in, not being different. They don't really teach us to be unique and to harness who we truly are. So a lot of conditioning comes from the environments we're in, the people we're around, and it's no one's fault. It's just, no one can escape societal conditioning. We're all a product of it in many ways. I think the real work is actually unpicking the layers and getting ourselves back to our true authenticity by recognizing the ways that we've been conditioned.
So the school system, do you think it's outdated?
100%. I mean, I don't work in the school system. I have a sister who does. Some of my other family members have worked within the school system. I don't have any children close to me either, so I don't see anyone day to day going into schools apart from, friends of mine who have children. But I think if I look back on my childhood, even obviously that was going to primary school was 20 odd years ago for me. And I still think that in retrospect, there is so many parts of the schooling system that didn't help me to harness who I am fully, didn't help me to be, vulnerable with my emotions, didn't help me to feel like accepting my unique parts. I think the schooling system very much teaches us conform, learn this criteria, and then go off and memorize it. And then you're set up for a world of work, which is normally a 9 to 5 kind of vibe. And I definitely don't think it's the teacher's fault by any means, because the teachers are just, they're inheriting a system ultimately that is outdated and they have to do their job. So I think there's so much that teachers do to help, but unfortunately the system itself is what's really, really outdated.
Yeah, my son, he's 15 and he's doing his mock exams at the moment. And he's been really struggling with science. So we've got him some private tutoring and he's really, really benefited from it. I think there's so many kids. He hasn't been diagnosed with ADHD yet, but I'm sure he's got it, as I have. And I really, really struggle to focus. I get easily distracted. My head's all over the place. Got a very busy brain, and he's very much like me. And he was really, really struggling. He went down in so many different sets, and he's been given this private tuition one on one, and now he's thriving. He's gone up. He's gone back up 2 sets. He's doing really, really well. And yeah, I think the whole schooling system really does need a big, big revamp.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It is, I think, from like a spiritual perspective as well. When we label children like ADHD, and there's many more conditions now that we kind of have to like take into consideration. But I think a lot of it is actually just the system not being set up in order to deal with, children who are actually showing us, mirroring to us the future of what children should be, which is expressive, unique, different. Mentally they're very different to what they were 20, 30 years ago because we're growing up with technologies now. So our mental patterns, our psychology is different. So obviously our learning styles are different. And when you have people that have different learning styles, but trying to pigeonhole them into a system that doesn't fit those learning styles, then there's an obvious gap in, the education system as how it's actually going to work efficiently, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'll have one teacher for 30, 40 kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And only, what kind of percentage is actually taking that information in when they're talking, when they're, it's absolutely crazy. But it's an outdated system and I'm sure in time it will, it will be revamped. But yeah, I completely agree 100%. So what are the biggest rules society hands us that you think are complete rubbish then, Rachel?
So many. I think one of them has got to be that stability equals success. I think that is probably the biggest one. I mean, I've talked a bit about conformity. I think that's another one. People pleasing is born from conformity. And I think we're a nation of people pleasers. But when we say when we think about stability and that equaling success, that is a very deep rooted belief that a lot of people hold. It's very scary to not be in a 9 to 5 or to not be in a job that feels stable, or to not be in a home, or, any situation that feels stable. But actually, success is born from embracing who you are authentically. And for a lot of people, that doesn't include the element of stability in a traditional sense. I understand that stability is important for many of us in different ways. But I think too much rigidity is actually more stifling than it is good. And I think that's a huge, belief that society kind of drills into us, and then we follow it and perhaps don't feel that true fulfillment inside because of it.
Yeah, you've mentioned a couple of times unlearning.
Mm.
So, how do people start unlearning without completely blowing their life out of the water, so to speak?
Yeah, it's definitely a process for sure, and it's a process where you really need to be self-compassionate, because, as I said before, it's nobody's fault that we inherit beliefs from people around us, from systems that we go into, and without necessarily meaning to inherit these beliefs. So it's a process where you just have to really start clocking the things that you believe. I think it's like, as you move around your day, question yourself a little bit more, and it's not a comfortable process by any means, but question the things that you believe. If you don't think you're worthy of earning money outside of a 9 to 5 system, or you don't think you're worthy of more fulfillment in your life, why might that be? Question the beliefs that you've maybe inherited from family members. Do people is there pressure to live a certain way, or is there kind of a particular path that feels more approved of by the people around you? I think it all starts with a lot of questioning and self-reflection, and just sitting quietly with ourselves, just to kind of get a feeling of the bits of your life that maybe aren't as aligned, because they're maybe more for approval rather than for fulfillment.
Yeah, it comes back to self-awareness. So many people that I speak to on here, everything in this self-development space revolves around self-awareness. And I think what you've touched on there is really important. Self-reflection, really, really thinking about what you truly want. I think so many of us are stuck in these cycles, in these habit loops, and the program subconsciously is at 95%, I think, and it's only 5% conscious.
Mhm.
We're running on we're just run on this we're running on that treadmill all the time, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so many people don't want to put the work in. They'd rather just stay stuck, and change is just too hard.
It is. Change is really hard, and that's the whole point. I mean, we can't get anything like better for ourselves without going through some sort of change. I always think like it is the only constant in life. We're constantly changing and adapting. The world around us changes and we have to adapt to it. But unfortunately, when it comes to changing ourselves, it has to be a proactive process. It has to be something we want to do. And when you're not ready, obviously it's uncomfortable. I don't think there is a point where you ever feel fully ready to embrace a change or uncertainty, because pushing yourself into those uncomfortable positions is it's just not something we want to do every day. We like to feel like things are safe and things are stable and secure, but the only way we can really grow as a person and really truly embrace who we are, and our authentic path and our alignment, is by that facing that change. And I think also by remembering that we are so capable of facing that change, even though the fear at many points is very overwhelming and very loud.
People that you work with, then, do you see as being the biggest factor that holds them back? Is it fear? Is it conforming, like you said before, like loyalty, conforming, not wanting to, because we are tribal creatures, aren't we? We like to we don't like to be different. We don't like to be unique. I know some people do, but is it money? Is it a loss of identity? What is the real root, do you think, Rachel?
It's a bit of everything, actually. It's definitely a mixture of all the things you've touched on. Fear is a huge one, to be honest. Fear is comes in so many forms, but yeah, fear of not having enough money, fear of being seen, fear of being judged, fear of the uncertainty. There is so much fear in this process, because once you've built yourself a certain life, and then your identity feels attached to the ways that you are, and maybe the job title that you have, or all these different factors in our lives, when it comes to making a big change, even though we know it's going to cause us eventually to be more fulfilled and to feel happier and to feel more present in our lives, we still feel like it's too big of a step to be judged or to be criticized or to fail. I think fear of failure is another massive one. And then again, people pleasing is another huge one. We don't realize quite how much we do this. I think a lot of it is so unconscious because, often people want to be liked. We like to be liked. It feels comfortable to be liked. It's another element of comfort that when you're liked by people, you feel like you're a good person. And I've definitely struggled with this myself a bit on my journey because a lot of what I talk about now feels quite disruptive. And when I go back to what I said earlier about when you're in the classroom as a kid, and if you're being disruptive, you're sent outside and you have to stand out there and wait for somebody to tell you to come back in. And it's kind of like breaking down those layers of people pleasing and reminding yourself that it's okay to be disruptive. It's okay to be different. It's okay to have a passionate opinion about something. It's okay to be unique because that makes up all of who you are. And there are so many of us going around too scared to do those things because we've been told, that comes with a consequence and that consequence might not be nice. But I think in many cases, the fear that people hold is so much bigger than the actual potential consequence. We really big things up in our heads. It's so easy to do. You overthink the worst case scenario. The brain has, or the mind has, a negativity bias. So we're always going to think, well, what if this goes wrong? What if it doesn't work out? What if I don't have enough money? Like, there are so many things. And I do see that that is the biggest problem. And it's really hard for people to override that feeling of fear.
Leads me on nicely to my next question. What is the biggest lie that we tell ourselves then when we're telling ourselves all these stories?
I think many a time it's like telling ourselves we're not worthy of that. And I don't think we're even necessarily using those words. I think we're just telling ourselves we're not worthy in indirect ways. So we will look at people who are leading lives that we maybe feel inspired by, or lives that feel, something that we potentially would want to live like. And we just kind of reinforce to ourselves that that's just not for me. That's just not really what I'm here for. That's not really possible for me. That's a huge one. People think, it's not possible for me to live a fuller life. It's not possible for me to have more freedom. We tell ourselves that we're just, this is how things are. We're just an average person and this is how things are meant to be for us. And it's really, really not true, but it's honestly the thing that I think keeps most people just stuck in the same patterns and in the same habits and in the same ways of living for far, far too long.
It's that identity shift, isn't it? It's the difference, I think, between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And the amount of people that I speak to that say, "Oh, it is what it is, and that's it." Like, put a line in the sand, end of. And I say to them, I said, things aren't black and white. There's so much grey in between. I said, if you start making small steps, I said, you can change. I said, people change all the time. Like you said earlier about evolving, people evolve. We were born to evolve. We have evolved so much as a species, and people don't have to be stuck, but so many people are, and they essentially become a prisoner of their own mind, I think.
Yeah, they do. And I think people feel the feelings, but don't necessarily know what to do about them, which is definitely where my work comes in, because I know I've had a lot of people come to me who've said, I feel that something's out of alignment in my life. I feel stuck in my job, but I just don't know what to do, what steps to take. And there was somebody who came to me recently who said something really powerful, which was, I don't feel ready, but I know there's never going to be a moment where I do feel ready. And that is so true. You never feel ready for this stuff. Like, it's a huge thing to, take an action that's going to shift your identity. It comes with a lot of loss, shifting your identity. A lot of people, in my experience, I lost friends, not in a dramatic way, but in a way that it's like when you're growing or when you're evolving, when you move cities or countries, or you decide to take a different path from the people around you, you're going to lose people, you're going to lose environments that you thrived in once. It's all that kind of clinging on to the comfort, clinging on to the past, clinging on to the certainty that we're so afraid to lose, because, as I say, we're scared that maybe the next step won't be worth it, or it won't work out in a good way. And it always does. That's the funny thing. When you follow what you feel, when you know and you feel it, that's your intuition speaking to you. And it always, always works out well. And I think that's a huge part of my mission as well. Like, I want people to realize listen to your intuition. It's only ever got your back. Like you're always it's gonna work out if you really listen to the things that you feel.
Intuition, then, Rachel, that gut feeling. What's your take on it? Because I think it's unbelievable. I
Uh,
really, really do. The amount of signs and synchronicities and stuff that I saw when we moved here to the Isle of Man, I just knew that we were meant to be here. So many things, there were so many blocks, so many things were going wrong. But when I started planning on our move here, I was well into my self-development journey. It was a few years back, and I was like, shall I really follow my gut? I've got I've got a really good life here. It's, I didn't have a dramatic rock bottom or anything like that, but I just knew that it was something that I had to do, and I really felt like if I didn't explore it, I didn't try it, and I think that's what a lot of people miss as well. A lot of people think if they do make a big dramatic change, then that's it. They can never go back. So I always used to say, we can always come back, but if I think if you don't try these things, then you don't want to die with that regret, do you?
Yeah, that's the worst thing, isn't it? That you know that you're going to get further down the line. And this was something I had to ask myself when I left my corporate job, because I had asked myself, in 5 or 10 years, will you be happy in this position, and will you be truly fulfilled? And the answer was no. And while that was really terrifying to sit with, I also knew that I couldn't get to my retirement years, for example, and look back and go, God, I wish I'd done that thing. Because whenever you speak to people that are in their retirement years, the first thing they say to you is live fully, do everything you want to do. You only live once. They say all this amazing wisdom. And I just would not want to look back and think, I really wish I'd done that thing. Signs and synchronicities, though, is so incredible, isn't it? We see recurring numbers when you're in your highest sort of state. If I'm really pumped and really energized and I've been kind of inspired that day and I'm creating something, I'll often see 11:11 on the clock, and I look and I think, why have I just seen that? Like, what's made me look at my watch? Like, it's so strange how you see kind of like patterns in numbers, and then you kind of get that confirmation. And I think a lot of it is confirmation, because we need reassurance that the path we're on is the right aligned path, particularly when you can't see the outcome. And we live in a society that likes certainty and it likes to know the answers. So I see that as a way that my spirit guides, if you like, or the higher realms of consciousness that we can't see, communicate to me of like, you're on the right path, keep going, like it's all going to work out for you. Just keep vibing high, keep doing what you're doing, keep being inspired, being creative, and helping people. Ultimately, I think we get so much fulfillment as human beings by doing that work, right? By helping others.
Yeah, yeah. I think giving back is the ultimate. Yeah, it's so fulfilling, especially when you help people and you do make that big impact. We've mentioned, well, I've mentioned manifestation a bit there when we were talking about intuition. What is your honest take on manifestation then, and what do you think most people get completely wrong about it, Rachel?
So many things. I mean, manifestation to me is alignment with your highest path, and it's alignment with your truest self. So a lot of it, I think, comes down to recognizing your authentic desires, not materialistic things, not the societally approved things, but your true authentic desires that are unique to you, and then taking steps in alignment with those desires. I think that's how manifestation actually works. And I think what people get wrong, many a thing, but I think a lot of it is not letting go. And I found this myself, because when you focus too hard on the thing that you want, it's almost like that grain of sand theory, or you're holding something too tightly, it just kind of like it slips through your hands. So you can't hold too tightly to the things that you want, because if you do focus too much energy on like, I want it to be like this, I want it to be like that, sometimes the things that we want aren't going to manifest in the way that we think they should. Normally, the universe is aligning things for us in the way that's best for our own growth, and it's best for a path that we can't see yet. And it's really hard, isn't it? Because you kind of think in your head about, it's easy to imagine all the things that could transpire and all the ways they could transpire and how things work out. But I think usually it's like not the way that you think it's going to go. And it's normally for good reason. There's always going to be different people involved or different steps involved that are actually something we couldn't foresee, but actually the best thing for us ultimately.
I think when we're coming from that sort of desperate state, we're giving out that desperate energy,
Yeah.
aren't we? And then when we surrender, when we let go, that's when it comes in. And you know, it sounds cliche, it sounds corny, and people who don't know anything about spirituality will laugh. But I was the same a few years ago. I was so skeptical about all this sort of stuff. But as I started reading the books and started doing the work, I started meditating, like you said earlier about meditation. I mean, meditation and manifestation, they sort of go hand in hand. I follow Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'm sure you're aware of his
Yeah.
work. And I love his meditations about, you know, going to your higher self, making those mental movies in your meditations, becoming that person. But yeah, when you're in a state of want and a state of lack, that's when you're not going to get it, and you've got to let go and just say, right, leave it up to the universe. It will come in divine time when it's ready. And this stuff's so powerful. I talk about it, and you know, I get I get chills talking about it.
Uh,
This is what it's all about to me.
100%. And but it is so hard to do, like the letting go piece, isn't it? And the balance of like, you really want things to go a certain way, but you have to just detach yourself as much as possible. And we can't see these outcomes, so it's really hard. Like you just have to trust. Self-trust is the biggest thing actually that I've had to learn in recent weeks, because I do a lot of work within my astrology practice as well around connecting with my spirit guides to get sort of psychic guidance for my clients, with their permission, of course. And a lot of it is trusting the information I get to pass on to them. And then when I see them resonate with the things that have come through my intuition and my guides, it's the most powerful thing, right? You're trusting yourself enough to give that information, even though you don't know with any certainty at all that they're going to resonate with the information. And it builds your trust. It definitely has built my trust to know that, okay, things are coming to me for a reason, everything's working out. And the more you kind of have that confirmed to you through manifestations that intentions that you set and actions that you align with, and then people resonating with things that you're saying, and it's just building your self-trust more and more. And I think that's how the path just kind of unfolds and spirals, because then you're like, there's no stopping me now, right? You're trusting yourself so much, you can just keep going and keep building that confidence with it all. But there are obviously manifestations that I think, or at least guidance that feels too generic. And I think really what people need to know about manifestation is it's not just about like writing something down and, it's about being true to your heart and like following what you really feel is right for you, and knowing that those desires are in your heart for a reason and not in anybody else's, so you have to take the aligned action for you. I think it's not going to work if we just say, well, I want a Lamborghini. Like you don't. That's a completely different desire. It's come from a place of validation and materialism. It's not come from a genuine desire to fulfill something within you. And that's the biggest part of manifesting.
Yeah, I think people don't want to do the work, do they? People always take the path of less resistance. That is for sure. And people, I think, I think, of course, we all want stuff quickly. Patience, it is tough, but when you do truly put the work in, and you really find out what you really want, and you work hard. I mean, people say, you know, oh, it's people say you can manifest a winning lottery ticket and all these sort of things. And that's why it gets such a bad
Mm.
rap. And you said about Lamborghinis before and all of these sort of things. But I think that just completely misses the concept and sort of gives it a bad name, I think.
Yeah, and I think also when you think about what your desires are, there's such a key difference between a desire that's sort of fulfilling an external validation or a societal kind of need versus something that's truly for you. Like a desire that's truly for you and for your own growth and for your authenticity is normally a little bit scary at the same time. I remember when I was asked to go on a podcast a few months back, the first one I'd done, and I felt scared to commit to it, even though it was something that I knew I wanted to do. I love speaking and I love talking about all these topics. But when somebody actually committed me to like, okay, when are we going to do this? That's how I really knew like this is an authentic desire of mine that I can manifest, because it's something that is feeling a bit scary as well as exciting. And for the most part, when we're manifesting materialism, like there's nothing scary about manifesting materialism. Like, why is it scary to want a Lamborghini? Like you don't, it's not the same feeling in your body when something is truly aligned to you versus something that's come from a place of pressure or validation or, external kind of focus.
Yeah, that's so true. That's a really, really good point. But the thing I think a lot of people get mixed up with as well is being scared and being excited. They say it about anxiety as well, don't they? People who suffer really bad with panic attacks, and you can always flip it and reframe it and say you're not anxious, you're just excited, and it's a different form. Yeah, that is so true. But I think you're truly growing when you do get scared, when you do get excited about things, and and it's good to have nerves as well, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Like somebody did say to me actually recently about there was a conversation which I think comes up a lot around intuition versus fear. And I think that's exactly kind of what you've said. It's like, okay, if something's recurring and it's making you feel a bit anxious and you know, it's not normally intuition is it feels a bit random, to be honest. It doesn't scare you in that same way. It scares you in a way that feels exciting. It feels like fulfilling. It feels like growth. It feels uncomfortable, but it's not like, if it's an anxiety, it could be like a fear of like, oh, somebody's going to leave me or like something's going to happen. That's not intuition. That's anxiety. And there is a fine line, sometimes between the two. I think people do tend to, and it's easy to kind of wobble and think, is that really my gut feeling or is that just fear? Because fear it just creeps in so easily. Fear is one of the most detrimental energies we can kind of, live from. But it really is, it infiltrates our mind like very, very easily and it stops us from doing so many things we want to do.
Yeah, it does. 100%. Fear is the killer of dreams. It really is. But yeah, when we do the work and we sort of dip our toe in the water, small steps. I think so many people get overwhelmed, don't they? They get big goals, they get big dreams, and they give up too easily because they haven't got a clear roadmap and they can't. I always talk about reverse manifestation. I think you should have a big North Star, a big goal, and then you can keep that vision and
Yeah.
that, you're going to hold on to that big why as your anchor, but then reverse manifest the steps,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
I think it does because actually, I mean, if you had a really big goal in mind, I know for me at some point I'd love to like finish a book, like write my book. I have a lot of writing on the go, but that as a goal for a long time felt like so big and almost like too big. So it's like taking yourself back to the smaller steps of, okay, well, write something every week or every day, or, what's possible for you in bite-sized chunks to break it down because the mind sometimes can't comprehend something that's too big and too scary. And then if anything, it leads to perfectionism or a procrastination, and we can't get ourselves kind of into the right positions to actually achieve the bigger goal because we're not taking the smaller steps that lead to it. But I use astrology actually a lot to help with this for people because sometimes we go through periods of our life. I think we said this before we started about seasons of life. There are seasons when you're meant to be pushing forward more. There are seasons maybe where the energy is flowing, but you're meant to be kind of taking stock and recalibrating and finding balance. And astrology is amazing for that because not only do we have a birth chart, we also have charts that foresee the energies for the year ahead. And I mean, they're not going to tell us exactly what's going to transpire in terms of real world events, but they are going to help us to, okay, this is a year for really pushing forward and initiating versus this might be a year where there's more kind of balance to be found, and helping people flow through their life in a way that feels more reassuring for them, I think, because a lot of it is around clarity.
So for someone that's listening that doesn't understand astrology, and I'll be honest, I don't know much about it, Rachel. So can you explain to me what it is in simple terms, please?
Yeah. So it's a birth chart is essentially a map of the sky when you were born. So at the moment you take your first breath, at the time that you're born, you will get all the planets will be in a certain alignment in the sky, and this will help you. It's archetypes. Each planet is an energy archetype, so it's kind of showing you this is your energetic potential. This is your energetic blueprint or makeup, if you like. This is a personality map. It's kind of a subconscious mind map. And it's pattern recognition at the end of the day. A birth chart is, well, a lot of people think astrology is just, the horoscopes that are dwindled down in magazines to be kind of 2 sentences long. And it's not. The reason why they're that small is because the system itself of astrology is so big and vast that to actually put it in a digestible format, they've had to kind of trivialize it a little bit. But in actual fact, your birth chart is such an incredible tool for mapping out who you are, what your authenticity kind of feels like for you, and the gifts that you possess as well. So it's a really, really valuable tool.
The biggest misconceptions that you see about birth charts then?
I think a lot of people just don't really know that they exist, to be quite honest, Luke. Like, I think people know astrology, but they know it from a place of like the media, what the media portrays astrology to be. I mean, even star signs in itself, people read their horoscopes, if you like, in the magazines. They would read it for their sun sign, because most people know what sun sign they're born under. If you're July, you're normally a Leo, or August. There's people that know that their sun sign is a certain sign, but they're not even meant to be read for that. The horoscopes are written by rising sign. So wherever the ascendant is, that's actually how you're supposed to read your horoscopes. And even then, they're not extensive enough because they're generalized by 12 signs of the zodiac. And actually, what people don't know is that every single person has all 12 signs of the zodiac within their chart somewhere. So all 12 energies, that all of the archetypes are within us, just in different capacities and in different areas of our lives. We all have a particular zodiac sign that rules an area of our life, and that's kind of how it all works. It's a map of the different energy flow and the different kind of potential that we hold.
How did you get into that then, Rachel?
I I really think I inherited the wisdom through my awakening, which sounds crazy sometimes, but it felt like a remembering for me. I don't know how I came to understand it in the way that I do. I didn't have to study it hard. I did obviously study, but not in a way that felt difficult, in a way that felt energizing and inspiring for me. And so many people find it as a system really complex. Even just looking at a birth chart, people feel quite intimidated by, because they are really quite visually like scary. But for me, it just came to me. It was almost like the wisdom was always there. It may be in past lives I've had something to do with this wisdom. And it was almost like, right, now's the time. You need to start using this to help people. And yeah, it's just such a great tool. I feel very fortunate and grateful that it is something that came so naturally to me in a way that was so unexpected, because it aids my work so well, and it aids my life so well, because once you know it like I do, you just feel like there's a higher purpose to everything that happens. There's a timing for everything. You can see it in the birth charts and in the transit charts, and yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
So, if a client comes to you, they're struggling and you want to work with them and they're interested in birth charts, then how would you go about helping them?
It really depends on their needs. I mean, I've had some people just want to know an overview of their own birth chart. So they'll come to me and they'll say, just give me a bit of a flavor of this. And I don't want to go too deep in terminology with them, because you can lose people so quickly with these details. But I'll just give them a flavor of, okay, your moon sign, for instance, is such a key part of your chart. And most people don't know what moon they were born under. But your moon is your emotional world. So that's something people really connect with instantly when I speak to a client and I say, okay, you're born under a Sagittarius moon, and Sagittarius is the archetype of wisdom. So you're probably somebody who loves to learn and to travel and to explore new cultures and new concepts. Like, that will be emotionally fulfilling to you. That will be something that makes you feel secure and safe. And seeing people feel seen by elements of their birth chart is just like the most incredible thing, because then they start to understand themselves better. And that's what it's all about. But it really depends what the client needs from me, because sometimes it's like, if they're taking a bigger step and they need some reassurance on timings, then there are other charts that I can pull up. It's a lot of analysis for me, and there's a lot of different parts to this wisdom that you can kind of pull in terms of different charts you can analyze. But usually, if it's just somebody who's new to it, it'll be a very much of, okay, let's look at your birth chart and let's dissect the bits of that are really resonant to you, and kind of unpacking for you what is your uniqueness and what gifts do you hold that you should really be harnessing.
There's a lot of untapped potential, I think.
100%.
Yeah. So, moving on to potential, what you talk a lot about helping people reach their higher potential. What does that mean? What do you mean by that in real life terms, Rachel?
Yeah, I think I mean just feeling the most fulfilled and fullest and happiest version of who you can be. I think it's easy to say stay fairly sort of stagnant in life when it, again, the fear thing comes up. The comfort zones feel really nice and really kind of cozy for us. But we all have such a higher potential. And I do personally believe that everybody's potential is to help other people in some way. And I see a lot of people realizing that through their journey, something critical happens in their life, they navigate something difficult, and then they turn that into their biggest gift because you can guide other people through it. And it's exactly kind of what I'm finding now with my own journey. You know, I've been through a huge transition, had a hell of a lot to deal with, and now I'm helping other people navigate their transition. So when I say reaching highest potential, I think it is recognizing within yourself the power that you hold, the agency that you have to be bigger and to be fuller in your life, and how you can just feel more, feelings of joy and just live as fully and as big as you possibly can.
What are the most common blocks that you see from different people that you work with that are on the edge of their next big chapter then?
Fear of judgment, perfectionism, fear of everything, fear of being seen, fear of the uncertainty of the risk, fear of lack. Oh my gosh, fear of lack is huge. Um, yeah, people just don't like to not know the outcomes. And unfortunately, life is not meant to be fully certain. You know, we get thrown curveballs. I think a lot of my work is reminding people, you know, if you have an evidence bank of times where you've dealt with something difficult, then you can deal with this. Things always, you know, we get thrown curveballs. We can't always see them coming. Usually that's how the universe works, right? If you get too comfortable, you're handed a redundancy package. It's that sort of thing where you just like shifts come in, happens, you have to deal with them. Even the pandemic is a great example of this. Like the world was thrown a huge curveball and it was so uncertain, but we managed. Like we worked through it. It was hard. There was a lot of grieving, there was a lot of uncertainty, but we navigated that change and we did it in a way that we've come out the other side. Arguably a lot of people are better off for it. So it's just reminding people, you know, you can do this. There is a lot of fear, but you have to push through it because unfortunately without pushing through fear, you won't reach the higher kind of peaks of life and the higher, you know, states of emotion. The spectrum of emotion is so big, but I think to reach the higher ones, you do have to sit and deal with the lower ones. It's like a, you know, balancing out of, okay, sit with that discomfort to really reach that thrill and that joy and that, so I think incredible kind of high.
I think we're quite a resilient bunch, aren't we?
We are.
And we don't give ourselves enough credit. And yeah, life is going to throw us so many curveballs. And I think so many people they'll play the victim mindset, won't they, when things go wrong and they'll beat themselves up. But it's about being resilient and it's about rolling with the punches and moving forward.
It is, and I don't really know what we get from being victims in terms of, you know, being negative. I mean, it's so easy, isn't it, to kind of say, oh, well, this is just how things are for me, and there's not really much I can do. Well, we all do have control at the end of the day. We can take small steps. They're uncomfortable steps. They're never going to be easy steps because that's just not how life works. But if we're willing, I think a lot of it is down to courage. If we really can harness that courage to face the uncomfortable feelings, then the payoff might not be immediate, but it will be massive over time. You know, you don't quit your job and then tomorrow everything's rosy. Things take time to fall into place, actions take time to prove themselves, and eventually you see that the payoff from the courage is far greater than you could ever imagine. It's, yeah, trusting in that unknown outcome, isn't it?
Imposter syndrome, I bet you see that all the time.
Yeah.
What's your take on imposter syndrome, Rachel?
I think we all have it to an extent, right? Like even I recently was thinking about a new offer that I wanted to put out and I kind of even questioned like, am I ready to do that? Am I ready to help people through this? And it's it's really difficult because the mind, again, it plays tricks on you and it kind of wants you to stay comfortable. A lot of it is ego, actually. Your ego is safer feeling comfortable. So it wants you to kind of just be how you are and everything will be safe. So it's about teaching the ego as well that over time, when you just say, it's fine, like we're going to do this, it's like holding your ego's hand throughout, like we're going to take these steps and it's all going to be okay. And then, yeah, again, kind of building that evidence, because imposter syndrome can creep in, but then when you have that evidence bank, as I mentioned before, of times when you've taken a risk or something's been thrown at you that you didn't expect and you've dealt with it well, it's just great to have that in the bank to kind of remind your mind that it's actually going to be okay, and we don't need to dwell too hard on the worst case scenario.
And that confidence is so that building the evidence to get the confidence is so hard, isn't it? And we can't. It's a tough one because people are saying to me, I'm not confident, but how do I get confident? And I said the only way you're going to get confident is by building the evidence. So you need to take that first step. But it goes back to what you were saying before about not knowing, and it's sort of having hope as well. I guess is having hope that things are going to be all right and taking that step forward.
Yeah.
And we've just got to have faith, I guess, and just go for it, right?
You do. And I think that a lot of it as well is reminding yourself of the inspiration you've had to even do it in the first place, right? Those dreams and those feelings and those desires haven't come from nowhere. They don't come through you because there's something within you that wants to be expressed and something within you that knows there is a fuller version of you to become. So I think it's like you've held that vision in your mind. If you can hold it in your mind, then what's to say it's not possible? Because everything starts in the mind. All great inventions started at first in somebody's head, and people most likely will tell you you're being unrealistic or being deluded, or you're not really doing the right thing, because people won't see your vision. They're never going to see your vision. The feelings that you have towards the vision you hold for your own future is solely your own. And this is another thing that gets in the way of a lot of people, because they'll say, oh, well, I want to do that, but my parents don't understand, or I don't think other people are going to get it if this is something that I choose to do, instead of doing like the known path, the predictable path. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing more to say other than you have to just go for it. You trust your vision. You trust that you've got everything in your bank to be able to handle whatever's thrown your way. And a bit like what you said earlier, what's the worst case scenario? Okay, we move back to where we were before. You're not going to. It doesn't happen. Once you start proving to the universe that you trust in its plan, its wider plan, things always start working out. And it's incredible to see. But if only more people had that initial courage, I think we would all be in such a better place for it.
Courage. That is it. That is another big one about all the things that we spoke about today. But I think a lot of your family and friends as well, they're not trying to hold you back from a negative place. A lot of it's from a positive place. They want to keep you safe. They don't want to see you upset. They don't want to see you make any mistakes. I always remember my grandparents, for example, when I first said that I wanted to go traveling. They were like, "Oh, really? Oh, it's dangerous. It's this, it's that, and the other." And obviously, I went, and I had the best time of my life. It was one of the best things I've ever done. But if I would have listened to them and stayed in my comfort zone, I wouldn't have had all these amazing experiences. But they were doing it from a place of love, and they thought that was the best thing for me. So I think that's a really good point to make, because a lot of people say, "Oh, it's just negative people holding you back because they're jealous, they're resentful, or whatever." But a lot of the time, these people are doing it from a good place, right?
100%. Yeah, you can get a mixture of both. And you're right. There's so many people that sort of want to care for you. They love you and they want to see you okay. And so a big part of it is for them, keeping you in the known parameters, because it feels safer for everyone if people are in known spaces. But I think what the best thing to do in that situation is remind those people that you are happy, remind those people that the path you're taking feels good for you. And that's what ultimately they want to see. The people who love you want to see you happy. They want to see you thriving. So rather than kind of reinforcing their fear, it's just telling them, I'm doing this because it's what's best for me. Like, I feel good doing this. And then There's not really much you can say to that when that's ultimately what you want for that person, right? But then you're right, there's also a mixture, because it's not always, a lot of the time it is from love, but you do get the people that are going to be jealous, evil eye, kind of looking at you because you're representing to them essentially a version of themselves that they could be if only they had the courage to take some steps out of their comfort zone. So yeah, it's kind of, you've got to be wary. You've got to know, you've got to surround yourself with the right people. The right people in the right environments is very key when you're on a path to growth, for sure.
Yeah, community is so important. And we spoke about this before we got on the call today. The energy and the high vibes and the feeling you're going to get when you're speaking to like-minded people, it makes such a difference. You talk to that negative person, they put you down, they make you feel small. They they see something in you that they wish that they had themselves, and they wish they had that courage. They wish they had whatever it is, and you get it. So I've had it so much over the last few years, and in the beginning, I really, really struggled with it, and I couldn't understand why they were doing it. But now I see it. I see it a mile off. I can feel their energy before they've even spoken. You sort of get a feeling for what they're going to say, don't you?
You do.
Yeah, but you learn to deal with it and it gets easier, but the messy middle, I think that part of growth when you're sort of leaving your old group of friends and you haven't got a new set of friends. I know Chris Williamson talks a lot about it on Modern Wisdom. It's really, really, really tough, but it's something that we've all got to go through if we want to become the best version of ourselves.
100%. I mean, you can stay in environments too long and then you become the top 5 people you spend your time with. So you have to make sure that they're people that inspire you. I always think now, like, I don't want to talk about other people in my conversations. I don't want to talk about who's getting married or pregnant. Like, I want to talk about what dreams you have. I want to talk about what you're working on that's going to inspire me. I want to talk about things that are actually I can see that you're lit up inside when you're talking about them. And when it comes to the jealousy thing, when you encounter these people, you'll know, because you'll feel it. You become more empathic when you're on a growth journey. You feel people's emotions. You're very quick to discern what place people are coming from. You can tell a mile off people that are jealous and people who are not. And I think a lot of it's unconscious to people. It's unfortunate, but it's not like people consciously go out of their way to, bring you down. They just, as you said before, they see something in you unconsciously. They don't know why they're drawn to your light. They don't know why, they're looking at your content, feeling something a bit uncomfortable, but they're feeling it because it's a mirror. Everything is showing them, the potential they could have, something they could learn, a way that they could grow into a fuller version of themselves. So yeah, using that discernment is so key. And I think when you say about, finding the right people, is it's tough when you lose people you think are going to be in your life for a long time. And even if it's not in a messy way, it's still hard to come to terms with people that maybe you were once close with, who you don't really feel as aligned with anymore. Like, the future version of you maybe needs different conversations or, different kind of vibes around you. But ultimately, I do believe that the right people come in at the right times, and you just have to persevere and push through it, for sure.
All my close friends have actually, in the beginning, when I started making this transformation, they did drift away and we weren't so close. But quite a few of them have actually come back now. I think it's taken them time because they've kind of had to mourn the loss of the old version of me, I think. So in the beginning, it was so tough, and I was like, "Wow, that's it. We're not going to be close again." But they've gone away. They've accepted it, and everyone's different. Some people accept it quickly. Some people take a long time, but I find that obviously everyone's different, and some people are meant to be in your life and some people aren't meant to be. And life's all about chapters and evolution, as we've already spoke about. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a really, really good point to make.
100%. Yeah, you don't know who's gonna. I think as well, I definitely forgot at periods throughout my journey or my transformation that it's hard for other people too, as you rightly pointed out. When you're transitioning to become someone fuller and happier and, shifting your identity, not only are you dealing with that and navigating that, but other people, as you say, are navigating that. It's like, it's uncertain for them, it's a bit uncomfortable, they don't really know how to support you properly. Sometimes it's not because of jealousy, it's just because they don't know what the right words are to say. They don't know how they can best support you. You're a version of you that they've never seen before. So they have to navigate those things too. And I think it's so true that people will come back around when they're ready, when they've digested it, when they've kind of got a clearer picture. You know, as humans, we like to put people in boxes, actually. You know, the mind loves to categorize people like they're this person and they're that person. And if you've always been this person who, you know, Rachel who works in media, and then all of a sudden you're Rachel who creates content and speaks about mindset and spirituality, it's really hard for people to compute that change. You know, it doesn't feel natural. I mean, God, it didn't feel natural to me, so it definitely couldn't have felt natural to others. It's difficult and it's uncomfortable, but yeah, it's exactly that, isn't it? Just waiting and seeing like who comes back around, who you can then open up to and be your most authentic self. I think the best way to realize who are the right people for you are the people that you are in rooms with and are comfortable sharing every part of you and not feeling like you have to dim yourself or like you have to hide parts of your success or parts of what you're working on or who you are just to feel like you fit in. If you do have to hide things, then I think that's the clearest sign that perhaps they're really not necessarily the right people for you.
You've spoke a few times about your old job, Rachel, about the corporate world.
Mm.
What are the top three signs that you're in the wrong job, even if it pays well? Because we've all heard the term of golden handcuffs referring to the job that pays really, really well. I know a lot of friends that are in really, really paid jobs and they're not happy. They're not fulfilled. They don't like them, but they think, how the hell can I leave? I earn all this money, X, Y, and Z. You know, I need the money for this, for that. I know it's terrifying for so many people to pivot. We've spoke about change and the fear and stuff. So yeah, what are the three signs? Would you say the most common ones
Yeah, I would
are?
say a lot of it is just feeling drained by the work that you do. So on that point, if you're kind of waking up in the morning and not feeling like inspired to do the work that you do, there's a sure sign that you're probably not in the right job. Another one, I think for me, was kind of negativity in the workplace. You know, if you feel like you're noticing that a lot of people around you are moaning quite a lot or complaining about things or just kind of bringing you down. I mean, that's another way of feeling drained because that sort of behavior will drain your energy. So it's noticing, how do you feel? A lot of it is around how you feel about your job. Like, I know it's kind of cliche, but if you don't feel lit up inside at the work you do, then I think that's a bit of a problem. I mean, we're not all fortunate enough to work a job that does make us feel lit up inside, because often there's other real world kind of responsibilities that we have that mean we have to earn an income, and you know, there's so much to navigate within that. But I think the main sign really is if you don't feel fulfilled in what you do, then to me that's really saying that there's something that's slightly out of alignment.
Intuition again, would you say?
Yeah.
That
It
gut
is.
feeling, your
It
gut will tell you.
is. I think a lot of people feel this feeling. I know certainly a lot of people that I know feel like they're not on their truest trajectory with their career. Again, conditioning, we're told, you know, go into this version of success, climb the 9 to 5 ladder, you know, corporate world will fulfill you. Eventually, a lot of people start thinking, oh God, is this my life? Like, am I going to do this for 20, 30, 40, 50 years? It's a really hard realization. God, I didn't like sitting with it. You know, it's not nice to think you've built your life and you feel very secure and financially stable, but there's something within you missing. For me, it was just that piece of like, you know, I wanted my heart to feel on fire with the things I was doing every day. I really wanted to be passionate about my work. And, you know, for some people that doesn't necessarily matter so much. They're happy and they're comfortable and feeling fulfilled in their work maybe isn't a priority. But for me, it really was. And I know that if I'd carried on in a job that didn't give me those feelings, then I would have over time become very bitter, probably, yeah, probably self-critical. I would have lost confidence as well. Like there's so much of an impact that can result from just staying stuck in somewhere where you don't truly thrive.
I think people become so resentful and
Yeah.
they lash out, they take out on other people. And I think this is where midlife crises come from as well. people wake up in their 50s or whatever, and they're like, "Oh my god, the, what what have I been doing all my life? Is this it?" Because there's a realization. I think you've only got so many years left. You get to a certain age, and you wake up, be like, "Oh my god, wow,
Mm.
yeah." And that's
Yeah.
why people want to make this pivot.
Yeah, and you can see it sometimes in the people you're around in an office environment, like, it's kind of savage to say, but there are a lot of people in office environments who are quite stuck in life, you know? They maybe haven't done any sort of reflection, and they haven't really truly considered the path that they're on. Again, it's these uncomfortable questions we have to be asking of ourselves if we really want to feel that true fulfillment. So if you're around that resentment and that energy of bitterness and kind of low vibration, then you're going to feel it too. And it's just not nice. Like, no one wants to be in environments with people all day who are, bitter at the world and resentful at their circumstances. It's not good, is it?
Definitely, 100%. And I've definitely worked in those environments before, um, on building sites with tradesmen, and so many people just unhappy in their jobs, but they get paid well, and they stuck it out for years and years and years, and it's really, really sad to see. Is there any podcasts or books, Rachel, that have helped you in your own transformation?
Yeah, so many. I'm losing an AirPod now. So many. I read so much. I love Journey of Souls, and then the sequel to that is Destiny of Souls. It's a lot. It's about a hypnotherapist in the States who basically hypnotizes people back into past lives, and then it goes through their sort of the spiritual kind of feelings through what happens after death. And then it's quite deep, but it really is quite inspiring, and it makes you understand that there is such a bigger purpose in life than what we maybe feel and see in the kind of reality that we are surrounded by every day. Some incredible insights from that have really kind of energized me. And also The Alchemist, that is such a great book by Paolo Coelho. Just like, I love the way it's written. I love that it's not sort of obvious self-development or self-reflection in context, but in its kind of creative format. It's an incredibly inspiring piece of work. And then other things that are obviously a bit more self-helpy, like Think and Grow Rich, great book. Atomic Habits, all the kind of standard ones. I've definitely read my fair share of self-help, and I love listening to podcasts too. I can't think of any off the top of my head because I haven't listened to any in a while. My podcast listening history is quite sporadic, but I do love them, and I think they're just so useful. There's nothing better than a creative and inspiring conversation, is there?
100%. And I think podcasts with real people, they can be so relatable to people who feel stuck as well. And they can hear your story. They can hear, I think so many people, they can see themselves in yourself. And when they listen to your story, they can say, wow, they can start, these pins can start dropping, and they can be like, wow. And it can spark something in them. And I think podcasts have helped me so much. That's why I wanted to start my own, and interviewing inspiring people like yourself, Rachel. So brilliant stuff. So, knowing all you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I think I would tell her to embrace the journey, like the lessons, see the lessons in everything, and just try as much as possible to be true to herself as she could. I don't have any regrets for my younger self because I know I had to live the experiences I lived to now see the perspectives I see and experience the things I did in order to then, be able to sort of feel what people would feel maybe navigating the same things. But yeah, I think it's all about just keeping true to yourself and embracing the lessons in every single thing that comes your way, for sure.
What does the next chapter look like for you then, Rachel? And where can people find you?
Next chapter for me, hopefully more of this, Luke, like more inspiring conversations, more podcasting, more speaking opportunities, helping more people. Just really, I'm looking forward to having a greater impact on other people. That's my biggest hope for my next chapter. And where can people find me? They can find me on Instagram and TikTok. I'm at Rachel Murrey, which is Murray spelt with an EY. And I mainly do work on there, and on Substack the same. I do some writing and bits and bobs, and a lot of speaking on Instagram and TikTok.
Rachel, thank you so much for coming on today and giving up your time. I love these sorts of conversations because they put words to what people have been carrying quietly for so many years. And more importantly, it shows them a way forward. So keep on shining your light, keep on doing what you're doing and making a difference, because it's all about making a difference and making that impact. I think what you said before is so fulfilling when you can help other people change their lives, right?
Yeah.
It beats any corporate job you're ever going to do.
Absolutely. There is no better feeling, is there, than seeing the impact you can have on someone else and like giving them something back. I mean, we all know it deep down. We all know it so innately, but we just don't do it enough. Like, how nice is it when you just like pick something up that somebody's dropped and give it back to them, you know? There's nothing better than giving something back to somebody, for sure.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thanks for
And
having me.
yeah, no problem. And there's so many other things that we could have spoke about. So I'll definitely get you back on again anyway. Okay.
Nice. Cheers. Thanks, Luke.
Cheers, Rachel. Bye bye.
Bye.